Boy, how storylines and narratives can change in just one season of football. Because a season ago, a lot of people, including myself, were calling for Neil Brown to be fired. Now in 2024, he is safely secured in Morgantown with this job, and West Virginia looks like a sneaky contender in the Big 12 Conference. A lot of returning pieces, yet some questions to still answer. So, can West Virginia truly be a Big 12 sleeper and a potential college football playoff sleeper in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to Prediction Season. It's where I predict all 134 FBS level college football teams this summer, which means I'm doing your favorite team. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. But I want to thank you so much for watching this video that you're watching right now, because it helps support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. And if you would like to continue to support what I do here on YouTube, please like, comment, share, watch my other videos. I'm predicting every team. After all, if you're a college football fan, I don't know why you aren't watching each and every one of these videos to get my thoughts on every team across the country. Thank you for all of your consistent support for this channel. Now let's talk about West Virginia football in 2024. How do we do that? Well, I'm about to tell you. We're going to take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the day, we'll go through and give the West Virginia Mountaineers a game-by-game preview and prediction of their 2024 schedule. A couple more things before we do start, because right over here are going to be the stats of the team, either offensively or defensively, put up last season. And right below the team's logo, for your viewing pleasure, of course, I've put the team's coaching staff. So with no further delay, let's talk about this offense for the West Virginia Mountaineers after a quick water break. All of you, make sure you stay hydrated out there. And now let's talk about the most important position on the field. Garrett Green does come back to this room. The primary quarterback for this team last season, if you will, really the first time that Neil Brown has ever got to work with a dual threat quarterback. And while Garrett Green saw a lot of success last season, not only was the team's primary quarterback, but the team's third leading rusher as well. Take a sniff at this stat line: 2,406 yards, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on around 53% completion percentage. We'll get back to his passing numbers in a minute, but his rushing numbers are what impressed me from last season. In 120 carries, had 772 yards and 13 touchdowns. Sack yardage is included in there, but wasn't a big factor because his offensive line only allowed him to get sacked 5 times. They allowed 10 sacks in total because Nico Marichal, again, I probably butchered that last name. I apologize. Did also get sacked 5 times and way less playing time than Garrett Green. You also did lose Sean Boyle through the transfer portal, and you supplemented him with Ryder Burton. Boyle didn't play last year. Burton is coming over from BYU, but Garrett Green's dual threat ability at quarterback is really, really special. Now, is there some development to be made in his passing game? Well, sure. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we got to talk about this rushing attack because it was spectacular last year. It was one of the better rushing attacks in the Big 12 Conference. Probably, you could argue, one of the better rushing attacks in the entire nation as well. It does lose Justin Johnson Jr. through the transfer portal. Only 150 yards and a touchdown for him last year on 38 carries. Nonetheless, your top 2 leading rushers do come back. C.J. Donaldson got the bulk of the carries with 171 carries, 798 yards, and 11 touchdowns last season. But Jaheim White was the big play master. 7.7 yards per carry, had 842 yards for 4 touchdowns last season. And then Jalen Anderson is back to kind of play a supplemental depth role as well. He had 44 carries last year. Probably will see a pretty similar amount here in 2020, or as I say, he had 44 carries in 2023. Should see a similar amount in 2024, if not more carries. But White, Donaldson, and then the dual threat rushing ability of Garrett Green makes this rushing attack so special. Now, the wide receiver room does lose some pretty key pieces out of it because your leading receiver in Devin Carter is gone to play on Sundays. 27 catches, which was second on the team, 501 yards, obviously led the team with 2 touchdowns last season. You also do lose E.J. Horton through the portal, a guy that posted a 200-yard season last year, and then some depth pieces in guys like Cortez Bram, Jeremiah Aaron, and Jashawn Polk. But your wide receiver room, despite all those losses, does return some pretty solid talent. Hudson Clement is back at 480 yards and 4 touchdowns for the Mountaineers last season. Preston Fox, Traylon Ray, Rodney Gallagher, some other talented pieces that come back. Fox and Ray probably will see a similar role, while Gallagher sees an increased role in 2024. And then you do get some transfers coming over through the portal as well. You are going to be getting, oh, my apologies, I got to find out where I wrote it down. There it is. Jaden Bray is coming over from Oklahoma State, while Justin Robinson coming over from Mississippi State. Bray, of course, a very talented player during his time in Stillwater, and Robinson can provide some pretty good minutes to this wide receiver room as well. No notable losses in the tight end room, so we'll get straight into talking about the Colt. We'll get straight into talking about Cole Taylor. The lead tight end last season had 444 yards and 4 touchdowns on a team high 35 catches last season. Traylon Davis is back to be his backup. But again, in the tight end room, it is the Cole Taylor show. And with your offensive line losing Zach Frazier and Doug Nestor, two of the better parts to what was a very good offensive line last season, they're going to be tough to replace, but you got 5 returning offensive linemen that looks like this: Wyatt Milam, Thomas Rimac, Jaquay Hubbard, Brandon Yates, and Nick Malone, as well as Xavier Bosley coming into this program. He is a transfer that comes in from Jacksonville State. Okay, let's talk about this offense in 2024, and it has to start with Garrett Green. His rushing ability, no questions about it whatsoever. Maybe, I don't know if you necessarily question his passing ability, but you definitely want to see the numbers that he put up last season improve in 2024. And by that, what do you mean by that, Nate? Well, I'm kind of expecting 2,500 passing yards. I'm kind of expecting 20 touchdowns. I'm kind of expecting a jump in that completion percentage. I'm thinking right around the 60% mark. If Garrett Green can even get to 3,000 passing yards with how good this rushing attack is, I mean, White and Donaldson easily are contenders to get 1,000-yard seasons. Now, they split carries and such. You're looking at 1,700 to 1,800 yards between the two of them there. But White and Donaldson, along with Green, all three pretty respectable candidates to get to 1,000 yards this season. Yes, White and Donaldson more than Green, obviously, but if this wide receiver room, if some of the pieces in the wide receiver room can take a step up along with Garrett Green's passing ability, Cole Taylor plays at the level he's at, and the offensive line has seamless transitions from Frazier Nestor, which again, all things that are going to be pretty difficult to do, but I think Garrett Green can take a step up. If the offensive line stays consistent, you're looking at a dangerous West Virginia offense in 2024. The defense, though, definitely does have more questions. The offense has a lot of returning pieces, and sure, development is going to be made, but the defense loses a ton of talent off a defense that already had some so-so performances last year. Overall was pretty good, but a lot of their better players are gone. Tomiwa Durojaye, who was off to Florida State, was one of their best defensive linemen last season. Durojaye last year, 23 tackles, 3.5 sacks. You also are going to be losing another very talented piece in Mike Lockhart, who had 21 tackles, 2.5 sacks in his own right, and James Hurd is off as well. I believe Lockhart is going over to SMU, and Hurd is going over to Syracuse. So what comes back in your defensive line room? Well, you still do get Edward Vesterainen back. Your leading tackler among defensive linemen last year had 28 tackles and 3 sacks. Sean Martin comes back, and I want to talk about him for the next 15 to 20 seconds or so, because he is a guy that a lot of fans in Morgantown have just been waiting to break out. This is the year that Sean Martin gets going. This is the year that Sean Martin gets going. Last year, 27 tackles, 1 sack. I don't know about you. I wouldn't consider that a breakout season. 2024, though, again, it feels like we say this every year with Sean Martin. He could be the guy on the defensive line this season. Fatorma Moba and Hammond Russell also both come back, and you get a Troy transfer and T.J. Jackson coming into the defensive line room. Your linebacker room does lose 2 very talented pieces as well. Leap Hogba, who was the leading tackler last year, almost triple digits, had 97 tackles, 3 sacks, and a pass defended last season. And Jared Bartlett, who was another top 10 tackler on this team, 49 tackles, 4.5 sacks. That led the way for the Mountaineer defense last year. You're losing 2 very talented linebackers out of that room. Lance Dixon and Tarek Austin Cave were both kind of depth pieces, but again, still some notable losses nonetheless out of that linebacker room. So Ben Cutter is back. 4th leading tackler, had 56 of them and a couple sacks last season. Trey Lathan is also going to be coming back, as well as Caden Beiser, Tyron Bradley, and Riley Collins. And you do get some pieces over from the transfer portal. Reed Carrico is a true linebacker that comes over from the Ohio State, and Ty French is a Gardner-Webb transfer that I put in the linebacker position here. You could put in the defensive line position as well. He's kind of that edge rusher type player. It'll be interesting to see what kind of role he has with this West Virginia defense in 2024. Should play some big minutes for this team. Let's talk about the defensive back room. I'm going to skip over one name for very good reason. He was a very good player, and obviously save the best for last. Andrew Wilson, Lamp, and Montre Miller are some losses out of the cornerback room. You do lose Malachi Ruffin to graduation. He had 37 tackles, 5 passes defended last season. And in your safety room, Hershey McLaurin is going to be gone. He leaves through the transfer portal, had 44 tackles, 3 passes defended last season. And Marcus Floyd is going to be gone as well. He was the 5th leading tackler. 50 tackles, 7 passes defended, 2 sacks last season. He has since graduated. But again, I said it, and you notice I skipped over one name. Beanie Bishop Jr. was one of the best cornerbacks in college football last year. No question about it. 67 tackles, led the team with 4 interceptions, and led the team in passes defended. Any guesses out there? Any guesses? Any guesses? All right, I'll just go ahead and tell you. 20 of them. That's 2-0. 20 passes defended for Beanie Bishop last year. That's an enormous loss in this defensive back room for the West Virginia Mountaineers. So let's take a look at what they have come back. Your leading tackler among returning quarterbacks was Jacoby Spells. He only had 8 of them last year. Jordan Jackson also does return, but it's a cornerback room that felt like it was missing some pieces. So enter a couple pieces from the transfer portal. TJ Crandall is a Colorado State transfer, and Aiden Garnes, I believe, is a Duquesne transfer. I'll fact check that right now. Yes, he is. He's a Duquesne transfer that should provide some pretty good minutes to this cornerback room. And you do get a lot of returning pieces in that safety room as well. Anthony Wilson is back, Aubrey Burks is back, and Avery Wilcox all were very talented players for the West Virginia secondary last season. There are a couple transfers that I didn't mention that could end up playing some big minutes. Jaheim Joseph, I believe, is a Northwestern transfer. Transfers in as a corner. They're probably going to end up having him play safety. Garnett Hollis is another cornerback transfer that comes in that could see some pretty solid minutes. Dantes Fagan is another corner that enters through the transfer portal as well. What I'm trying to say, West Virginia has supplemented themselves pretty well through the transfer portal with all the talent that they do lose. And again, can some of these pieces on the defensive side break out? The linebacker room, I think, is going to be the toughest to fill because guys like Pogba and Bartlett, I don't necessarily know that there's any guy as talented as those two in this room. Now, obviously, they can prove me wrong this year. The defensive front, waiting for a couple guys to break out. I'm looking at you, Sean Martin. Defensive back room, we'll see how well these transfers do fill in for some of the losses that they have, such as Floyd and Ruffin and McLaurin, and especially the likes of Beanie Bishop, who are going to be some massive shoes to fill. Let's take a look at the West Virginia schedule in 2024. It looks like this. And how do we predict it? Well, any game at home is going to be underlined. Well, any game on the road is in italics. That's that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Mountaineers will win easily. Any game in yellow is going to be a close game, very competitive, maybe back and forth. Possible upset game, if so, but I think the Mountaineers come away with a win, and red is a loss. And I think you start out with the game in red against the Penn State Nittany Lions, a very talented team that returns one of college football's elite defenses in 2024. Abdul Carter is going to be moving to his true position in edge. The offense has one of the best running back tandems in the entire country, and a guy in Drew Aller that, look, yes, has to show us that he still has that downfield ball capability. He didn't really show it last year. I think he still has it in his bag. Yes, you did lose Keandre Lambert-Smith, but Julian Fleming comes in through the transfer portal. Look, I've talked a lot of good things about Penn State so far in that little 35 to 40 seconds that I just spoke. But this game is on upset alert, especially if Drew Aller still doesn't quite feel comfortable with that downfield ball. If some of the losses on the offensive line, if some of the losses defensively lead this Penn State team to take a step back and see some early struggles at the beginning of the season, Morgantown is going to be rocking. This is going to be a fun game to watch. Penn State is on upset alert. You better watch out for this one, Nittany Lion fans. But for the Mountaineer faithful, I do ultimately see it being a loss. A lot closer than last year's embarrassing loss in Beaver Stadium, but this year I still think the same result happens, and that is a Penn State win. You should get your first win of the season, though, against the University of Albany in week 2, but now you enter a very interesting game against the Pittsburgh Panthers. Pittsburgh is one of the more interesting teams in the ACC to figure out. Their quarterback battle is still currently ongoing, but they do have some really talented skill position players. The quarterback play has to be solid. It doesn't have to be great. They still have Rodney Hammond in the backfield. A lot of good wide receivers, some really good defensive pieces as well. I think this is going to be a tough matchup for West Virginia here. I feel like Pitt's going to be able to do what they need to do to limit Garrett Green's effect that it has on this game, and I do have Pitt winning this game at home. Now, could West Virginia win this game again? Yes, absolutely. Do I see it happening? Not necessarily. I think this is going to be one of those games where West Virginia is just going to kind of struggle. Some of the losses on the defensive end, I think, are going to get exploited in this one, and West Virginia drops that game on the road against Pitt. And then you enter Big 12 play, and oh boy, their first 5 games here, an absolute gauntlet. However, I think West Virginia does pretty well off during this very difficult 5-game stretch. Kansas, that's a top 25 caliber team. Jalen Daniels, Devin Neal, they have a ton of offensive talent, but they lose a lot of pieces defensively, including a really good defensive lineman in Anthony Booker, and the defense still has a lot of questions entering 2024. I think Garrett Green and his dual threat ability are going to give this Kansas defense fits, and West Virginia walks away with a win against the Kansas Jayhawks. Then you get a bye week before you have to go on the road and play the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Now, we should have learned our lesson by now not to count out Mike Gundy, and you can't do it again this year. If Alan Bowman can remain healthy and can provide some consistent quarterback play and improve that touchdown to interception ratio, Ollie Gordon is coming back. A lot of solid defensive pieces come back, but that's where the question marks lie with Oklahoma State, right? The defensive end. I do think that Garrett Green still is going to be able to give this Oklahoma State defense some fits, but Stillwater is going to be a tough place to play this year. West Virginia has some pieces they need to fill in on the defensive end as well, and I think Alan Bowman has himself a pretty good day here as West Virginia loses their third game in 5 tries. But I do think they get back to 500 with the win over the Iowa State Cyclones. Now, you can't count out the Cyclones in 2024 either. Rocco Becht has a lot of young but really good returning talent coming in around him. Defensively, you got a lot of good pieces there as well. Iowa State is a team to watch in the Big 12 Conference in 2024, much like West Virginia. This definitely could be a game of, okay, prove it. Who's going to be more of the sleeper pick this year? I'm going with West Virginia and Garrett Green. I think they're just a little bit better, and I think they will beat the Iowa State Cyclones. Especially helps that that game is at home. It helps that this game is at home too, because Kansas State's got a quarterback in Avery Johnson that I think is going to be really, really good. He's got some good returning offensive pieces. The defense has got a lot returning as well. Yes, you do lose some of your better players through the transfer portal, such as safety Kobe Savage and others, even some guys going off to the NFL as well. But Kansas State's still going to be a really good team. This is going to be a quarterback battle to me. Can't wait to watch this one between Garrett Green and Avery Johnson, but I think West Virginia is going to win this game here. I like West Virginia in this matchup. I like the defense to start to turn things around and start to really figure things out, fill those roles. Everyone's going to know their role by this point. Morgantown's going to be a really electric and tough place to play this year. I got that one being a win for the West Virginia Mountaineers. And then in a little bit of a shocking one here, I think West Virginia goes on the road and beats the Arizona Wildcats because Arizona has a lot of defensive question marks. And I think Garrett Green, I'm relying on him to take a step up in his passing ability this year in 2024. I think it's going to happen. I think the offensive line is going to remain fairly consistent. Yes, replacing guys like Frazier and Nestor are going to be hard, but Arizona's got a lot of defensive questions. Now, West Virginia's defense has to be up to task here because Tyrone McMillan is one of the best wide receivers in the country. Noah Fafita is a rising young star at quarterback. They still got some solid pieces in at the running back position, even with all they lost through the transfer portal. Arizona's going to be a tough team to beat here in 2024, but I think West Virginia goes on the road and is able to do it. I think the defense forces that extra turnover they need. Garrett Green has himself a good game, and West Virginia picks up a huge road win against the Arizona Wildcats before your second and final bye week of the season, and then the rest of the schedule, very manageable from here. However, I do think they drop one of those games. I don't think it's the Cincinnati. Cincinnati, I still think, has some building to do under Marcus Satterfield in the Big 12 Conference. They'll probably sit towards the bottom of the Big 12 in 2024. Baylor, same thing. I like Dave Aranda as a coach, but the talent level, little concerned about with there, although they did get Daquan Finn. So he could definitely lead them to some wins, but that game is in Morgantown. I like West Virginia to win that one pretty easily. You have to watch out for UCF this season. And I think the Knights strike here. You got KJ Jefferson in at quarterback, some very good defensive pieces. You got a lot of pieces coming in through the transfer portal. Gus Malzahn knows what it takes to win some big games like this. And I think not USC, my apologies. I think UCF is going to go on the road and pick off one of these teams in a very tough environment to play in. And I see it being this one right here before West Virginia rounds out their season with a win on the road against Texas Tech. They got some question marks to answer too. And I like Garrett Garrett Green to outdo whatever quarterback Texas Tech is going to field. So for me, I got an 8-4 record for West Virginia, but a 7-2 record in conference is pretty good. Now, can they beat Penn State? Yes, that one maybe probably the game you look on the schedule and say, okay, they're going to have to play really well to win that one. But the Big 12 schedule is manageable. Yeah, you have some tough road games, even some tough games at home. But I like West Virginia to duplicate what they did last year. I got an 8-4 record. Let me know what you have in the comment section below. And remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. We'll talk about the Hokies, an ACC sleeper. Potentially, you'll find out tomorrow. Goodbye.